Administrator. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I'm joined by one of our fellow board members, Megan, who's our Communications Director. And kind of before we begin, I didn't know if we wanted to go around our little virtual room since we're a relatively small group and just introduce ourselves and say a quick hello. Start with Andy, since you're...
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Andy. I'm here with Stars, and yeah, I've been here for about 2.5 years, and prior to being here, I was in higher education, like y'all.
Great. Daniel?
Dan Goldman, I'm with Ecologic Furniture. We're a furniture manufacturer for student housing.
Great, thank you, welcome. Dane?
Yes, hello, I'm Dane Howell. I'm with College Boxes by U-Haul. We help students move to and from school and with their storage needs. Last year was the first time we participated in NWACUHO and had a great time, and looking forward to continuing on that in the future.
Allie? Is that how you pronounce your name?
Yeah, it's Allie. Hi. I'm Allie. I use she, her pronouns, and I work at Oregon State University as the Apartment Operations Coordinator. I've been here for about 2 years, and I was just joining to kind of see what this was all about.
Great, thank you. Welcome. Corey.
Good morning. I'm Corey Langston. I'm the Associate Director of Residence Life at the University of Alaska Fairbanks.
Thank you. Aaron?
Hi, my name is Aaron Lester, and I'm with Folio Furniture. Sorry, I was having some technical difficulties.
Welcome, Aaron. And is it Mez? M-E-Z? Well, welcome as well. So I think I grabbed everybody. Did I miss anybody? Oh, Jeff, there you go.
Yeah, hi everybody. Jeff Bexford with PAE Consulting Engineers. I apologize, I joined a couple minutes late. That's why you probably missed me. But I was invited by Kurt, and so we do a lot of student housing work with Kurt and Mahlum. So happy to join and learn a little bit more about what you guys have to talk about today.
Great, thank you. Speaking of Kurt is a co-presenter. Thank you for joining us for the Advancing Corporate Engagement, Deepening Our Connection and Value for our NWACUHO First Friday, which is the second Friday of this month, but we kept the name. Kurt and Mahlum wonderfully offered to co-present with me today. But before we kind of proceed, we did want to do a quick land acknowledgement of the two co-presenters. I'm from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. I also serve as the NWACUHO Corporate Relations Director. But I wanted to acknowledge the Alaska Native Nations upon whose ancestral land our campus resides. In Fairbanks, our Trothia campus is located on the ancestral lands of the Dene people, the Lower Tana River. And I might as well read Kurt's as well, and then I'll let him introduce himself. So Kurt is based in the Portland metro area, and we would like to also acknowledge that the Portland metro area rests on the traditional lands oh my gosh, maybe I'll have Kurt do this because I'm not sure how to pronounce and I don't want to butcher it.
Yeah, no problem. The Multnomah, the Wasco, the Cowlitz, Clathmut, Clackamas, bands of the Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Molalla, and many other tribes. So obviously Portland being on the Columbia River was really a crossroads of many indigenous communities as they traded and lived and harvested and cared for the plentiful natural resources. And so we acknowledge that that we are on important land.
Yes, and that set the foundation for where we are today. So yeah, our presenters today. So once again, my name is Mathew Mund. I'm the operations manager at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. I've been with Residence Life for a little over 2 years now, and I'm also the corporate relations director. Kurt?
Yep, my name's Kurt Haapala, partner with Mahlum Architects. We are a design firm located in Seattle and Portland, and I've been doing this for a long time and have developed many residential communities on a tremendous number of campuses and universities, and it has really informed how we think about student success and supporting student needs.
Great. Okay, so just kind of go over briefly our agenda today. We're going to talk about why is corporate engagement important. Of course, from a corporate perspective, considering your audience as you're engaging with our institutional members. Then Mahlum's going to talk a little about going into their engagement story and history. Talking a little bit about, from your perspective, what's your strategy when it comes to your membership as well as engagement in Northwest ACUHO. And then we'll talk a little about some corporate membership updates at the end. So why is engagement important? So from a corporate, actually, Kurt, did you want to do these slides, or am I doing these slides again?
Well, you can. I mean,
okay, I'll do them. So from a corporate membership perspective, if you're not kind of already aware, Northwest ACUHO is made up of both institutional members as well as corporate members. And the institutional members kind of make up the kind of core, but we wanted to make it very clear that our corporate memberships were equally as important to the vitality and the energy of our organization. So that's why we have membership levels in Northwest ACUHO versus just having like exhibitors or corporate sponsors. Our corporate partners are more than just exhibitors and a simple financial transactions. They are the partners to ensure the success of our students. So another piece too of our corporate memberships options are to allow you to streamline your sponsorship process while being kind of an active member organization instead of being kind of confused how you can engage, where you can engage. We make it pretty simple through our membership process. Corporate partners are also a reflection of the existing relationships that many institutional members already have. So in housing, we rely on our corporate entities and our success in supporting our students in housing and dining kind of operations. And so we want to reflect that in our organization at Northwest ACUHO. And we also firmly believe that our association is a better because of the high level engagement and participation our corporate members have with Northwest ACUHO. So I just wanted to set that stage of why corporate engagement is important and kind of where they fall in our structure. Also, I want to talk a little bit from our institutional members because I'm glad that a couple of you have joined and kind of understanding how you fit into this puzzle. So our institutional members are super important to our corporate members because they can share information about corporate membership opportunities to whoever they work with that might not be engaged with Northwest ACUHO. And they can advocate to help us grow our corporate memberships as well as maintain our current ones and make sure that they see the value. A lot of the value that comes out of corporate membership are those meaningful interactions with our institutional members. So we ask our institutional members to take the time to engage with our corporate memberships and be present and such as when they're at the exhibit hall sessions, their educational opportunities, when they reach out directly through email solicitations, just making sure that we're reciprocating that kind of relationship on an institutional side. Yeah, any questions about those kind of two topics? Anything I kind of missed that maybe you feel like anybody wants to kind of mention there? Okay, whoops. Okay, we'll move on.
Yeah, I can jump in, Matthew. So one thing that over the years that we've really understood through our continued engagement is that there are a diversity within the audience in terms of professional experience. And so when you're thinking of nuanced or more advanced ways that you can engage, I think it's important to actually consider the audience. So we wanted to just in some ways go through on a very basic level the attendees of Northwest ACUHO and how that might impact your thinking about engagement. So if you go to the next slide, I think it's just a understanding, as I just stated, can help who's attending can help tailor your presence. It's not just setting up a booth and looking at what are the products and services that you can provide, but being engaged throughout the entire conference and throughout the day really provides opportunities for those diverse experiences that I think we found so enriching. And of course, as a as a vendor or supplier, understanding what the value you're bringing certainly is important as you consider that, and what's new and relevant information that you do want to share and that the audience would find interesting. So if we go to the next slide. So as we know, a lot of the universities are supporting entry-level staff to participate in Northwest NWACUHO. It's a great place to start learning about the institution, about their professional career growth. However, they're new to this. They have limited exposure to a conference. Maybe this is the first conference they've ever been to. They have limited exposure to vendors or the design and construction process. And so they're going to be very apprehensive. They might just swim by the booth and never make eye contact because they don't know what to say. They don't know what to do. But they are focused on learning because they've had this. They've been offered this really wonderful experience at Northwest NWACUHO. If we go to the next slide. Another big category is the mid-level professional, right? So these are often in supervisory roles or assistant directors or area coordinators. They've maybe been to Northwest NWACUHO or NWACUHO before. They do have some indirect interaction with vendors and purchasing processes, and maybe they've even been invited to focus groups or been a part of a renovation or a design process. They might be slightly more discerning on who they want to connect. Maybe they've made a relationship and they make eye contact, and they'll come over to Kurt and say hello because we had some previous experience. They are also focused on learning and deepening those relationships on their own professional growth. And then last but not least, we have our senior level, senior housing officers, their director positions, AVPs, vice provosts. Here's our President Craig here is my example. So what is Dave looking for in his experience at Northwest NWACUHO? Well, he's going to be more selective because he's been to a number of conferences, number of organizations. He has regular interaction with us as vendors. He's involved in purchasing. He is involved in design and construction process. I would say that he has a more discerning and more selective connectivity that he wants to make, but he's also supporting his organization and his staff. And he's looking for trends. What is going on in our industry? How can we talk about the future? And so, understanding those three dimensions can help you in your engagement strategy, short and sweet. So I'm going to quickly cruise through. I think the next section is a little bit of what Mahlum has done in the past. And I'll start by saying Northwest NWACUHO has been so instrumental in our growth as design professionals and my staff that I can't tell you the value that we've received has in some ways far exceeded the input. It's a cliche to say this, but I'll say it, the more you put in, the more you get out. And so that has been part of the message I want to share today. So vendor participation, if you go to the next slide, here is one of our booths with some of my staff that were invited to, I think I don't remember where this is, Bellevue, it could be Calgary, I don't know. But, and we've got our little chocolates to draw people in, but we wanted to make our booths more interactive. So we had our virtual in this particular conference. We had VR equipment set up, which I think was kind of interesting and unique because we don't sell products. We are not selling furniture or software, but we are partners in the design process. Next slide. I think one of the most impactful areas for us has been sharing content in conference sessions. Next slide. Here you've got a slide, many familiar faces. Dan Larson is up there, but I think in the audience, I see Shelley Clark, I see Catherine Magura, Erica Lordai, John Wheeler, a lot of friends here listening to Dan talk about the right partner and the right team. Next slide. Over the years, and I'm talking about a lot of years, since 2007, we have been actively engaged in sharing content, and it has been so rewarding. I can't tell you enough. So just because you're a vendor, that doesn't mean that you can't submit and participate in sharing content and receiving content. Next slide. So over the years, we have done everything from just straight presentations, as we see Dan doing. We've hosted a roundtable. We've had working sessions up in the upper left. We had workshops where we actually proposed projects and gave our audience an opportunity to really roll up their sleeves and understand space planning. And then I've even spoke on organizational structure, less about student housing, but more about how do you have a dynamic culture within your organization. So it's been really diverse. Next slide. Last year, opportunity to sit back and have some campfire chats with Craig Whitten up at North Island. Next slide. And it was a lot of fun. I don't know if anybody here attended, but we kind of went a little theatrical. We set up a tent and a campsite and really talked about our experience, our life experience, professional and personal, and how that might impact you as an individual or a professional in your career. So again, thank you for moving me along, Matthew. Presentation allows content to share content with impact, collaborate with college university partners because you need an institutional partner to submit an abstract, deepens your understanding of the nuance of your clients and the student needs, and presentation skill building, very important. Next slide. Hosted events, I think that's next. Great way to differentiate yourself and really demonstrate, next slide, your commitment to the organization. We've been able to host closing banquets and other things. Next slide. Back in 2015, we actually asked to just host the Affinity Social, and we turned that into a bit of an image exercise. It was a lot of fun. There was food in the background, food and drink, and we were, and you can see the Wordle in the graphic that was produced back in 2015. Go to the next slide. So again, differentiating yourself raises your visibility with the attendees, making personal connections, and again, demonstrating that commitment. Next slide. So one of the biggest ones that we've been so proud to host has been the Advancing Professionals Challenge. Next slide. Actually, if you go to the mission statement, we were asked by the Northwest NWACUHO leadership the very idea that, hey, we'd like to get the vendors more involved. We have these vendor booths, and it's really how can we get more engagement? And so Mahlum came up with this. I think it was initially called the Mid-Level Challenge, and has now become the Advancing Professionals Challenge. Next slide. First time we did it was in Victoria, where, next slide, please. We used Oregon State Sackett Hall as our case study. So we actually created a bit of a design assignment where participants were really negotiating services and products with funny money that we, branded, which was a lot of fun. And so it was a way for these groups to run over to furniture and software and washer and dryer, and all these vendors, and like purchase the equipment needed for Sackett Hall. So that was kind of interesting. Next slide. We came to Portland, and we used Portland State as our example of developing a project in 3 dimensions. So if you go to the next slide, you can see we created a rubric, and we created puzzle pieces, and teams were asked to basically create a new residence hall on a available site that we on. So that was kind of fun. And oh, by the way, each one of these we started to grade them, and we had a first place and a second place. So it was a little competition and a little fun for the teams to give presentations of their ideas. Next slide. I should move through these pretty quick, I guess. The other thing we did was wanted to put really deep and important conversations on the table. In 2020, next slide, we wanted to talk about universal design and supporting diverse student needs that may be blind and low vision, or deaf and hard of hearing, have cognitive or differences or mobility challenges. So we used Alma Clark Glass Hall up at Western Washington as our case study. And again, opportunities to dig deep into themes that Northwest NWACUHO attendees deal with on a day-to-day basis, but how that can be solved in the built environment. Next slide. Sorry, this is too many slides, Matthew. You were right. In 2021, we were virtual, but we moved into concepts around design justice. Next slide. And so we used Wilmer Davis Hall at Washington State as a case study of analyzing its historical context, both the good and the bad. Moving forward, next slide, towards understanding and empathizing with this, a diverse student that has an intersectionality of identities, and how, next slide, one could reinterpret Wilmer Davis in a way that was inclusive, was equitable, that centered lived experiences. And it was just a really rich discussion. Next slide. So certainly deepened our engagement. It was engaging to the greatest extent possible other corporate sponsors, whether they knew they were going to be engaged with or not. It's become an event that I think attendees look forward to. And it's putting critical issues on the table to really discuss at great detail. Last slide, I think we're maybe done. Yeah. So with all that in mind, what is your engagement strategy? So the next slide, I just threw some questions on here that I might, as a corporate sponsor, think about. Like, why am I even here? As a person representing my organization, why am I here? What are the goals for attending that conference? Is there anything that your organization already has that you can share from a conference presentation standpoint, or even at a booth? Is there something new about your product or your services that you personally see as benefiting the users, or something you're really excited about that can draw people to your table, or that you can share and get into dialogue? And where are synergies amongst each other? You know, Jeff Bexford, thank you for acknowledging us. We work with PAE all the time. We have co-presented at Northwest ACUHO and other organizations of systems design, and how mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems can really advance student success. So, like, thinking across the vendor spectrum about what is inspiring and what you can share. So I guess we're doing pretty good on time. Maybe that was almost, now I've gone too fast. 10:25. The next slide, I think, turning it back over to you, Matthew.
Yeah, so well, I guess since we have a little bit of time before we go into kind of changing gears,
yeah,
I guess, do we want to kind of touch on that a little bit more? Does anybody else want to kind of share maybe what they've done at Northwest ACUHO or at a different conference that they felt kind of used some of these strategies or answered some of these questions?
We've overcorrected.
Which would be helpful, because I mean, from my perspective on the board, I'm always looking for different ways to engage and making the memberships real. People who choose to purchase a membership realize the value of the memberships, as well as our things. And so this particular presentation focused a lot on that physical conference we hold once a year, which is our big event, regardless of if we do try to do other things. But the board does have interest in throughout the year doing smaller events. Before COVID, like things like drive-ins were more common. We did, was it Western Washington hosted a drive-in in July? And so it was a smaller event at Northwest ACUHO. Was able to kind of sponsor it a little bit. I haven't heard a report of how it went or anything. But we do try to do things like that for more regional, where they maybe can't, the institutions can afford or to send the contingent they want to maybe Northwest ACUHO or a different conference. And so that's something that we are kind of continue to kind of look at. The other pieces too are these webinars like this. We actually hold them every first Friday. Most of them are focused on our institutional members, but we do want to make sure our corporate members know that they're always invited. There's oftentimes insights that our corporate members have that because of the bubble that we work in in higher education that we just don't see. And so oftentimes we get insights, at kind of any platform. We also have coffee chats every month. And so those are more of a casual roundtable on some sort of subject, to just kind of get people to also get to know each other. That's one of the things in our region, is that because we aren't a huge concentration of universities. One of the things we hear from our professionals is sometimes they feel isolated because they're like the only one at their institution doing that thing. And so that's what that kind of purpose is just bring people together to build those connections versus learning. It's more like, oh, now I know this person over at this other institution, so now I'm more comfortable to reach out to them if I have a question or an idea or something like that. And of course, we have our newsletters. The newsletter now is fully based on our U membership site, which is what's behind our website when you sign in. And so we do rely on you going on and creating that kind of profile, which now I'm jumping ahead in the presentation a little bit, but The newsletter is our other form of communication. Inside the newsletter, which has been a little bit dormant, is something called the sound things blog. Yeah. And so that blog is for anybody who wants to submit, it could be something in the industry that, is an article that people are kind of interested in, a little bit of a blurb about where trends are happening. That's an opportunity to engage with our membership indirectly as well. So yeah, so I just wanted to kind of throw out our strategy that we currently have. Does anybody have any thoughts around how to expand that or change? Okay, well, we'll continue on. So I wanted to give some updates about some changes to our corporate memberships. I just wanted to give a general reminder that our corporate members are based on the calendar year. And so they are January to December. So our conference is always in February. And so for those of people who want to renew their memberships, it often happens right before the conference. Sometimes it causes some confusion. Our institutional memberships are on a fiscal year, so they're July 1st to June 31st. So that's sometimes, just so you're kind of aware, it is a different cycle for our institutional members. I did want to kind of pop over to this site that I have linked here just to make sure everybody's aware. Let me just stop share and then I'll reshare. I just want to make sure everybody's aware of this particular site that's on our main site under membership. It says exhibitor and corporate memberships. So the first part of this site just explains to somebody who might not be familiar with the corporate memberships, the kind of rationale and value around them. And then down here are our 2024 corporate membership levels. We did make some adjustments to the rates. And we left the platinum one because we had raised that last year, what the rate was, but we did increase slightly the other membership rates, as well as added some more value. One of the things we changed was that the second line used to just say meal tickets, but now they're actually full attendee registrations. There was some confusion around it when I started because the previous corporate relations director had only lived in the virtual world and never actually ran a conference. So when I came on, there were a lot of kind of inconsistencies in what maybe the previous boards were intended there. But we just want to make sure that our corporate members understand that they are fully welcome at the entire conference and all the meals and events. Later on, there's kind of some guidelines about, how we're operating inside of those sessions and areas outside the exhibit hall. But which I'll touch on in kind of a second. Outside of that, all these other kind of items are remaining the same. One of the big ones is that list of annual conference participants. You do just need to be a corporate member to get that. You don't necessarily have to go to the conference or be a registrant. So, but we do require at least that minimum bronze level. And as you kind of see, there's more and more opportunities that grow as you go up in the membership levels. So if you ever kind of are looking at this, it doesn't make sense to you, you don't see the value in it, maybe there's something else you'd see a lot more value in, please communicate that to me so that we can kind of work that in, because we want this to make the most sense to our members as possible. So down below, oftentimes we get questions about additional corporate opportunity sponsorship. You do need to be in that silver, gold, or platinum level to actually sponsor something at the conference. But there's these opportunities such as the conference scholarship fund, sponsoring one of the actual events of the conference. And that's pretty much all of them. The bottom one's just kind of a fun idea of a coffee coupon if you just want to have something kind of thrown in the registration packet, but you don't necessarily want to sponsor like a full event. So that's the coffee coupon is just an idea. It could be something else. But we do ask that you kind of book those around December, just so that we can make sure that we're able to kind of get everything lined up with the rest of the planning. And so if it happens later than that, we can work it in, but that's just kind of a general date. So further down is where the actual conference. A person can, of course, choose just to be an exhibitor and not be a conference or have a membership as well. But as well as our members can choose to be an exhibitor. So it kind of works both ways. The details for the conference are there. We did bump up the exhibitor costs. This is driven by the increased costs from the hotels and the event space that we have. But just be aware there that there was a little bit of an increase. Yeah, so and just as a reminder, the standard electrical is included, but if you need a higher voltage, there could be additional costs for that. So feel free and read through the rest of this. It does go through the details, particularly how we place people in the exhibitor hall. We do give preference to those who are in certain membership levels to choose their space. And then it goes over some guidelines of what we expect from our exhibitors throughout the conference. So just want to make sure you're aware of this site. And then let me pop, I guess, any questions about anything so far? So going back to changes. So I did mention that we have an increased emphasis on our online membership portal. So our newsletter, communications, registration, everything is going through there. Previously, we were using, I just totally forgot what it was called, but a different
MailChimp.
A MailChimp. So if you were suddenly stopped receiving the newsletter, I think as of like maybe July, that's wise because you don't have a portal kind of in our membership, or you're not part of the membership group. So I already kind of mentioned that we changed the additional meal plan to a conference attendee and the changes to the membership and exhibitor rates. Yeah, so we're really excited about our conference coming up in February. I'm sure everybody's aware of it. We're hosting it at the Graduate Eugene, and it's on February 5th to the 7th. So kind of going over specific things around the exhibitor pieces. It's linked back to that same site. But our normal schedule for exhibitors is that you set up on the first day, so that's that Monday, later in the afternoon. The conference technically begins that new time, and sometimes there's some kind of morning events. That's usually the standard schedule. The next day is when we have dedicated exhibitor times. There's normally 1 or 2 slots where there's nothing else except for the exhibitor hall. We also have the exhibitor lunch, where we will go back to presenting the exhibitor recognition, as well as we have an exhibitor kind of snack break. And the lunch and the snack break, as well as the things like the exhibitor bingo, are meant to generate traffic and get people to come and talk to you and interact with you, and not just kind of let that, not be part of their conference experience. And then normally exhibitors break down after that kind of snack break, so it's late in the afternoon. And then something we also do is have a board meeting with our corporate members. That's a little bit after the breakdown. And so really the exhibitor time is just that one Tuesday. The conference then continues the following Wednesday with a reception that evening. So it's normally kind of 2.5 days. So in the past, that's worked well for exhibitors because it's more of a condensed. So if they're not interested in doing else, they can come in, do the dense time, and then leave. But I just wanted to verify that schedule still makes sense to people as we kind of finalize that at our October board meeting, as well as there were some ideas around, do we want, since the exhibitors are there and setting up on Monday night, do we want to have, a reception or something for exhibitors to kind of mingle? Would they rather just be really clearly formally invited to those events? Do they kind of what other kind of things that Monday night was kind of the time that maybe could have something else kind of built in if there's interest, as well as making sure they know they're invited to the whole conference. So you're welcome to come at the beginning and go through all the way through Wednesday at the end banquet. So yeah, so that concludes the formal presentation. Any questions or ideas for me?
Matthew, I don't know if in the past you all have done this because, having moved over to the dark side, that is the vendor life. Have you all done like night on the towns or like dueling piano nights, things that sponsors can, or that the corporate partners can sponsor or kind of help encourage and get people kind of out of their hotel rooms?
Yep. So let me go back to that. Our site. So right underneath the grid where it talks about our membership, as long as you are a silver, gold, or platinum, you have the opportunity to sponsor one of those events. So the Northwest Night on the Town, it's set up as a co-sponsor because it was a bit of a heavy lift. So that's set at $3,500, but you could decide to do the full $7,000. A snack break sponsor, exhibitor break, opening reception, closing reception. And so I'm trying to think, normally Monday night, I don't think we schedule anything. And one of the things that corporate entities have done with that time is kind of have their little dinners that they have with their clients or potential clients, leaving that space to have their little private receptions that they traditionally kind of have had that kind of Monday night time frame. So normally don't book anything on that night, kind of partially for that reason.
Okay.
I chime in, in the past, there has been lots of diversity. I do remember a dueling piano night. I remember in Alaska, there was a magician, and, those are big investments for a corporate sponsor. However, they're very well attended. I remember, the piano bar in particular, I think we were snowed in Edmonton, so you had a captive audience too, but that was a lot of fun. So karaoke night, there's been all kinds of options.
Yeah, and normally so there's a local arrangements committee that is kind of in charge of working out what these things are. And so whoever comes to us with interest by that December timeframe will connect them with the local arrangements committee to say, hey, what are you kind of already thinking? If the corporate sponsor has some ideas that they would like to put in place, then we can kind of reconcile those. But that's where the specific thing is very location, obviously specific. It just depends what's available.
Oh, obviously, I completely understand that. I think it's very easy for a lot of entry levels to feel very excluded from those dinners. And I think something that we're trying to be a little more intentional with doing that is kind of opening it up to everything and not making it so much about a reserved dinner or opening it up. I know we did a dueling piano bar in Billings this year, and we're trying to step away from that traditional dinner sense, just to open it up and make people feel a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah, so last year we actually had 3 events at the same time. There was supposed to be ice skating, but I think something kind of happened with that. We rented out kind of a party bowling alley that had like an entertainment space. It was more like a lively bowling alley kind of scene. And then I feel like there was a third one.
Starres hosted some kind of a like barbecue, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was also, but yeah, during there was 3 overlapping. It was supposed to be like ice skating, the like Instagram studio, and then the arcade bar. Yeah. So yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
Could bounce around.
Exactly. So that's why we try to leave the Monday night available for those events that the corporate events entities want to have kind of with their so that the people don't feel in conflict with the conference schedule. But of course, we can't control everything. But yes, I would say that in Northwest NWACUHO, we're mostly made up of new professionals, people who are kind of new in, it is that kind of population that comes to our conferences. And so because of that, there is a certain energy, a lot of interest and engagement. I mean, we were a little nervous in Calgary because, you know, it was, you know, obviously it was in Canada. We had, it was the first time kind of meeting in person, not knowing what was going to kind of happen. But it ended up being a very, like, people were really engaged. People were really happy to be there. I know Allie was there, Andy was there, Kurt obviously was there. And so it was really, I mean, because it's a lot of young people in the first place, that's the feel of the conference and new professionals. We do, of course, cater to all like levels, but versus if you go to ACUHO, it's a lot more of those senior professionals, a lot more of the pomp and circumstance, a lot more, you know, that feeling that maybe new professionals are a little bit more unsure about. So.
Well, thank you for the clarity on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I found interesting about the new professionals and the advancing or the mid-level professionals is, you know, they might not be the primary decision makers on whether they're going to, you know, purchase your software package or your washers and dryers or your as an architect, or but they will be someday. But more often than not, they have really great insight as to what works and what doesn't. Right? They're a lot closer to their customer, which is the students. And so, like, we've just found that engaging and being curious, does this space work and this one doesn't? Or how does the furniture contribute to a sense of well-being, right? You know, breaking it down in your own specific product or service can be really illuminating. You might be able to take a brilliant idea back to your CEO or the manufacturing team to say, like, if we just tweak this chair, I keep going to furniture, but if we tweak this chair, people are going to love it. You know, I don't know. I'm being a little rose-colored glasses there, but like, it matters.
So we do expect a larger conference this year. So we're projecting like 200 to 250, which is, I think we were right at 200 for Calgary, which was more than we expected, which was good. But normally when we're in Oregon or Washington, we have larger conferences. And so that just to kind of give you an idea of the size of the conference as well.
Matthew, if I might, we've got a few minutes. I'm going to ask some questions about bingo, and I'll first. The question is, how is the bingo being received from each vendor's perspective? And I'll offer this. I do think, you know, being able to fill out your card and get registered for you know, gift certificate or a drawing is a motivator. And I've had situations where somebody has sauntered up to me and, you know, they're mostly interested in checking that box on Mahlum and moving on to the next. And that's okay. And then, you know, but every time someone does approach you, it's an opportunity to be curious about what they're doing, what their profession is. But so I'm just curious, do you guys really like the bingo, or is there any ideas of ways to augment that or change it?
I think the bingo is a great way to get people out of their door, but it needs to be a little more intentional. And each thing they have to ask a specific question about the vendor, or the vendor has to ask a question about that participant. I think that takes away that stigma of you walk up, like you said, and it's mostly like punching a ticket. I think, you know, in a student-centered field, the vendors should be asking about how the students are, and entry levels. I mean, you know, it's funny that you mentioned furniture, and that's what I do, but I think that when people walk up to me and they're just like, I can't buy anything. I'm like, I didn't expect you to buy this couch right here in front of me. But I think it's having those conversations and kind of really destigmatizing what a vendor is, because a lot of times people feel it's, what are you trying to sell? But, you know, you've all been echoing the most important part of being a vendor, and that's a partner. It's corporate partners, not corporate vendor. It's about how we can support you. And I think the vendors need to be a little more intentional in getting to know entry levels and getting to know mid levels, and not just sitting on what they know. And the same goes for entry levels, being comfortable being able to approach vendors, however that might be.
Well, that's great. That's super helpful. Yeah, we can definitely tweak that. And I'm also happy to kind of send out a draft, you know, and kind of get people's input on whatever we use to do incentives. or to incentivize the circulation outside of what we're kind of already doing with the schedule.
Yeah, I just want to jump in and say we've had really positive experiences with the bingo boards. You know, I also got to go to Waste this year over in Las Vegas, and they also had a similar thing like that, and just drives really good engagement. You know, I think what works for us is we all have our different like kind of tools and gimmicks that we have at our table, but you know, starting the conversation with bingo and then trying to kind of create further conversation around, hey, we also have this giveaway we're doing, or we have this activity, you know, and then hopefully from there being able to kind of roll it into an insightful conversation for both sides and a networking opportunity. So yeah, it definitely worked last year at Calgary, and I thought it worked in Las Vegas pretty well too.
Great. Let's see. Let's go back to the. Yeah, I think that concludes. That was, yep. That was kind of it. Thank you really honestly for coming. One of the things I was hoping to gain with this is just, you know, was a little bit more early communication before our conference, and getting our kind of ducks in the row, make sure people are informed about any kind of changes we've made. And normally registration at the latest will open up on November 1st. That's our big target date. But like I said, at the October board meeting is when the board puts everything, you know, tries to get things cemented down so that we can get the registration open at that point. You know, round exhibitors each year depends on the exhibitor hall. So when I visit the site in October, I'll get more understanding of the layout as well as any of their requirements when it comes to shipping things, any kind of deadlines for special requests. You know, general registration. Some vendors are more flexible than others, or some locations are more flexible than others when it comes to deadlines for registration. But normally it's about 30 days before the conference, which puts us in that July, like 5th, or sorry, not July, January 5th, which is always awkward because it's right after the holidays. Yeah, of course, if you can put some thought in that you know, December timeframe, kind of cementing if you're interested in joining us in Eugene, that would be great.
Yeah, I might offer, we're planning on doing the Advancing Professionals Challenge again, as long as NWACUHO is excited about that. And we've been noodling internally a little bit about, you know, as I noted, we talked about universal design or design justice. We've been spending a lot of time thinking about carbon, and thinking more back to climate change, and you know, architects and engineers have strategies, and that's all interesting. But when we think about your product, when we think about whether it's a physical product like a piece of furniture, or it's a product like a washer, or even software, like we might be looking for ways to partner with you so that, and it might require a little homework, and you can be mad at me, but like being able to be at this conference to understand the carbon impact of your industry, and just swirling in my head, you know, trying to have some kind of rubric where we're either designing something or we're assessing the carbon impact of a residential community or something like, and so the learning outcome for the professionals might be, you know, every choice we make has a carbon impact, right? And being mindful of that is just one more dimension in their growth as professionals. It may not be the day-to-day thing that they deal with, but you know, our younger generation is even more focused on environmental impacts or reducing environmental impact. So we're noodling with that right now. So maybe stay tuned for more. We might be reaching out ahead of the conference to say, hey, here's our plan. Here's how you can engage with the Advancing Professionals Challenge. Carbon offsets, all sorts of interesting ideas, right? So stay tuned.
Great. Yes, exactly. Thank you, everybody. Any other closing thoughts? And since we did record this, we'll figure out how to get a kind of a link and then share that with our board members. If you want to share it with any of your colleagues or anything, feel free. But thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks, Kurt. Thanks, Matthew.
Thank you. Bye.